Quraysh increased and accelerated their preparation for the decisive battle with the Muslims at the turn of the year. Everything was ready for the move. The Meccans also decided to take their movement along with them, for they might arouse them to fight manfully. Thus, a group of 3,000 pious warriors, of whom 700 were male soldiers and 200 well-mounted cavalry with 3,000 camels and 15 women, marched towards Medina. The general leader was Abu Sufyan bin Harb. The cavalry was under the leadership of Khalid bin Walid, assisted by Ikhim bin Abu Jahl and Bani Abdurdar, who were entrusted with their flag. The mobilization of the Meccan army. After the preparations were complete, the Meccan army began its way toward Medina. All deep-seated hatred enveloped the whole process for warning a bitter and a bloody fighting. The Prophet survey discovers the movement of the enemy. Meanwhile, Abbas bin Abi Talib was closely watching the military movement and preparation for war, and these were all included in an urgent message sent by him to the Prophet ﷺ, who received it while he was in Quba Mosque. Ubay bin Ka'b read the letter to the Prophet ﷺ, who asked him to be secretive about its mysterious contents. He hurried back to Medina, convened a meeting with the helpers and the migrants, and consulted with them over the measures that should be taken. The Muslims prepared for imminent danger. The whole of Medina was put on the alert, and all men were heavily armed even during the prayer in anticipation of any emergency. A group of helpers volunteered to guard the Prophet ﷺ and kept watchful eye all night at his door, among whom were Sa'ad bin Mu'ad, Usayd bin Hudayr, and Sa'id bin Ubad anhu. Lest they should be taken by surprise, armed groups of the Madinis began to police the entrance and roads leading to the city. To check the movement of the polytheists, Muslim platoons began to patrol the routes for any probable enemy raids. The Meccan armies approached Medina. The Meccan army, on the other hand, continued the march along the usual western road. On reaching Al-Abwa, Hind bint Ubwa, Abu Sufyan's wife, suggested that they dig up the grave of the Prophet's mother, but the leaders of the army refused to do so for fear of the consequent results. The army then followed Wadi al-Aqiq and turned right to encamp themselves at a place called Al-Ainain near Uhud mountain. That was on Friday, 6 Shawwal 3 A consultation assembly for a defensive plan. The scouting party of Medina conveyed the news of the Meccan army step by step. Then Allah's Messenger held a military consultation assembly to exchange views about the situation. He told them about a dream he had. He said, "By Allah, I have dreamt of. I pray Allah to be a dream of bounty. Cows slaughtered at that, and that there was a groove at the pointed top of my sword, and that I had inserted my hand into an immune armor." The interpretation of the cows was that some of his men were killed. The Meccan armies approached Medina. The Meccan army, on the other hand, continued their march along the usual western road. On reaching Al-Abwa, Hind bint Utbah bin Sufyan's wife suggested that they dig up the grave of the Prophet's mother, but the leaders of the army refused to do so for fear of the consequent result. The army then followed Wadi al-Aqid and turned right to encamp themselves at a place called Ainain near Uhud mountain. That was on Friday, 6 Shawwal 3 A consort. The interpretation of the cows was that some of his men were killed, and the groove at the pointed top of my sword was that a member of his house will be hacked. As for the army, it was Medina. Then he offered a suggestion that his companions should not go out of Medina and that they should encamp themselves within the city. He was of the opinion that the enemies should be left in the open to exert themselves, and thus the Muslims will not risk a battle. But if they thought of attacking Medina, Muslim men will be ready to fight them at the mouths of lanes, whereas Muslim women will help from over the house roofs. Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, the head of the hypocrite who attended the meeting as a chief of Al-Khazraj, supported the Prophet's plan. As a matter of fact, his agreement was not based on the righteousness of the plan, but rather on the personal benefit. He did not want to fight. On the contrary, he secretly aimed at staying far away from the fight. However, it was Allah's will that he should be disclosed and disgraced in public. For the first time, it was his will that the curtain behind which the hypocrite's display was concealed should be uncovered and pulled down. Allah's will enabled the Muslims to recognize the reality of those snakes that were creeping within their garment and inside the sleeves of their clothes. Thanks to Allah, they recognized them in one of the most critical times of their lives. Some of the best honorable companions who had missed al-jihad in Badr battle, they said that the Prophet ﷺ should go out of Medina and urge him to accept their point of view. One of them said, O Messenger of Allah, for a long time we have been looking forward to this day, and we have prayed to Allah to make such a day draw near. Thanks to Allah, it is time to fight, so let us go out and fight our enemies, lest they should think that we have lost heart and do not dare to fight them. Hamza bin Abu Talib radiallahu anhu, min Mishiba, the paternal uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, who had already covered the ornament of his sword with the literous blood in the Badr battle. He was head of those eager people who urged him to go out and meet the disbelievers. He said, the Prophet ﷺ, by Allah who has sent the book down unto you, I will not taste food till I fight them with my sword outside Medina. After weighing carefully the pros and cons of the issue, he said that the enemy should be restricted outside the city at Uhud. Divide the Islamic army into troops and departed to the beautiful. Ascending the pulpit at the Friday congregational prayer, the Prophet urged the people in his sermon to fight courageously. He told them that if they remain steadfast, they will be helped. Then he commanded his men to make ready for the battle, and they rejoiced. He led the afternoon prayer with crowds of people. Then he entered his house, accompanied by his two friends Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhum. They helped him dress and wear his said clothes. He armed himself and wore 2 sets of armor. One over the other he wore his sword and went out to meet people. People were waiting impatiently for him. Sa'd bin Mu'adh and Hussein bin Hudayr radiallahu anhu blamed the people for imposing their view on the Prophet ﷺ. They said, you have forced Allah's Messenger ﷺ to fight the enemy outside Medina. Therefore they were determined to leave the whole matter to the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ came out, they said, O Messenger of Allah, we should have not disagreed with you. So you are free to do what you desire. If you prefer to stay inside Medina, we will stay with you. Upon Sallallahu remarked, it does not suit a prophet that once he had put on armor, he should take it off until Allah has decided between him and the enemy. The Prophet ﷺ divided his army into 3 battalions: Al-Muhajirin battalion under the command of Musa bin Umair al-Badri, Al-Ansari Aus battalion was commanded by Usayd bin Udair radiallahu anhu. Al-Ansari Khazraj battalion with Al-Hubab bin Al-Mundir radiallahu anhu to lead it. The army consisted of 1,000 fighters, 100 of them armored and no horsemen. He appointed Ibn Khattum radiallahu anhu to lead the people in prayer in Medina. Departure was announced and the army moved downwards with the 2 Sa'ads who were armored running in front of the army. Upon passing along Al-Wada mountain path, he saw a well-armed battalion that was detached from the main body of the army. The Prophet inquired who they were, and he was told that they were Jews and were allies of Khazraj. They told him that they wanted to contribute to the fight against the idolaters. Have they embraced Islam? The Prophet asked, no. They said so. He refused admitting them and said, we will not seek the assistance of the spirits against the idolaters. Parading the army. As soon as he reached a location called Ash-Shaykan, he paraded his army. He dismissed those whom he considered to be disabled or too young to stand the fight. Among them Abdullah bin Umar bin Al-Khattab, Usama bin Zayd, Usayd bin Zuhair, Zayd bin Thabit, Zayd bin Arqam, Araba bin Aus, Amr bin Hazim, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Zayd bin Haritha al-Ansari, Sa'd bin Hatba, and Al-Bara bin Azib. But a hadith in Sahih Bukhari pointed that he had shared in the fight that day. Al-Prophet allowed both Rafi bin Khadij and Samura bin Jundub to join the army, though they were too young. The former proved to be skillful at shooting arrows. The latter would wrestle the former and beat him. The admission of Rafi made Samura say, I am stronger than him, I can overcome him. When the Prophet heard this saying, he ordered them to wrestle. They did. Samura won, and he was also admitted. As in the night between Uhud and Medina, as night fell upon them there, they performed both the evening and the night prayers and spent the night there as well. If the people were chosen to guard and patrol the camp, Muhammad bin Muslim al-Ansar, the hero of the brigade of Ka'ab bin al-Asraf, was in charge of the guards, whereas the Khwan bin Abdul Qais undertook the responsibility of guarding the Prophet in particular. The rebellion of Abdullah bin Ubay and his followers. At the end of the night and just before it was daybreak, the Prophet moved, and when he got to a shout, he observed the morning prayer. There he was close enough to the enemy that they could see one another. It was there that Abdullah bin Ubay, the Habari, rebelled against the Muslims. 1/3 of the army withdrew with him. That is to say, 300 fighters. He said, we do not know why we shall kill ourselves. He claimed that his withdrawal was no more than showing protest against Allah's Messenger, who had already refused his opinion and accepted that of the others. And obviously that was not the real cause of his separation. If it had been the refuse of his opinion, as the Prophet claimed, they would have no sense whatever for his joining the prophetic army. If it had been so, he would have refused to go out with the army from the very beginning of the march. As a matter of fact, the real purpose of this rebellion, withdrawal, and detachment at this delicate and awkward position and time was to produce panic, confusion of mind, and disorder in the Muslim army who were within the sight and hear range of the enemy, who were also looking forward to seeing more and more conflict in the sight of the Muslims like themselves. He also aimed at breaking the high moral of the believers. That will accelerate in their religion, in the breakdown and simultaneously the death of Muhammad his faithful companions and Islam as a whole. The day will then be clear for the reclaim of presidency, which that hypocrite had lost on the advent of Islam to Medina. Short of Allah's care, the hypocrite's plot will have been successful. Banu Harid al-Aus and Banu Salama al-Khazraj were partially impressed by the hypocrite's behavior. Both of them, overwhelmed by confusion, they had almost started to withdraw. But Allah's care saved them from that decrease. Allah says, إذ هم طائفتان منكم أن تفشل والله وليهما وعلى فليتوكل المؤمنون. When two persons from among you are about to lose their heart, but Allah was their wali, supporter and protector, and Allah should the believers put their trust. That is Surah 3, verse 122. Abdullah bin Haram, the father of Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu anhu, attempted to stop their withdrawal. He remained hypocrite of the duty at this delicate and awkward condition, but in vain. He followed them, criticized them, and advised them to go back, saying, "Come and find the way of Allah, or at least be defenders." They said, "If you had known that you would really fight, you would have not gone back." Having despaired of them, he addressed them, saying, "May Allah cast you away, you enemies of Allah. Allah will certainly suffice His Prophet." Allah says about those hypocrites, وَلْيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا قَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَوْ يَدْفَعُوا قَالُوا نَطْعَمُ الْقِتَالَ لَاتَّبَعْنَاكُمْ لِلْكُفْرِ يَوْمَئِذٍ أَقْرَبُ مِنْهُمْ لِلْإِيمَانِ يَقُولُونَ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ مَا لَيْسَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا يَكْتُمُونَ. And that he might test the hypocrite. It was said them, "Come find the way of Allah, or at least defend yourself." They said, "Had we known that fighting would take place, we would certainly have followed you." They were doubtlessly nearer to disbelief than to faith, saying with their mouth what was not in their heart, and Allah has full knowledge of what they consider. Surah 3, 167. The remainder of the Islamic army is on the move to Uhud. With the remainder of fighters, Allah moved towards the enemy. At the rebellion and withdrawal of the hypocrite, the number of soldiers was reduced to 700 only. 700 only. The camp of elders was situated in such a place that the many roads leading to Uhud were almost blocked by them. So Allah said to his men, "Which man of you can lead us to where the people of that idolaters are, along a short track that does not pass by them?" Abu Khaytham radiallahu anhu said, "O Messenger of Allah, I am the man you need." Then he chose a short track that led to Uhud, passing by a Haram, Bani Harida and their farms, leaving the idolaters' army westwards. On their way, they passed by the field of Marwa bin Ghazi, who was blind hypocrite. When Marwa felt that realized they were the Prophet army, he started drawing out at their faces. So they rushed to kill him, but the Prophet said, "لا تقتلوا فهذا أعمى القلب أعمى البصر." لا تقتلوه فهذا أعمى القلب أعمى البصر. اللهم صل وسلم. Not kill him, he is blind in heart and eyes. Allah went along till they climbed down the hillock of Uhud at the slope of the valley. He came there with his army facing Medina, while their backs were to the hills of the Uhud mountain. So the army of the enemy stood as a barrier between the Muslims and Medina. The defense plan. Imagine Komoto. He selected 50 skillful archers that formed a squad and made them under the command of Abdullah ibn Jubair bin Nu'man al-Ansar al-Awsi al-Badri. He issued orders to them to stay where they were, on a mountainside at the south bank of the Qanat Valley, southeast of Muslims' camp at about 150 meters from the Islamic army. Later on, this mountain was called the Mountain of Archers. Allah clarified the mission of this squad in words he directed to them. He said to their leader, "Drive off the houses from us by means of arrows, lest they should attack us from behind the rear. Whether we win or debate or lose it, stand steadily in your position, and mind that we are not attacked from your side." He added, "احملوا ظهورنا أحملوا ظهورنا فإن رأيتمونا نقتل فلا تنصرونا وإن رأيتمونا قد غنمنا فلا تشركونا." If in our backs, if you see us slain, do not come to us, and if you see that we have acquired booty, do not share in that with us. In a version by Bukhari, the Prophet said, "إن رأيتمونا يقطفنا الطير فلا تبرهوا مكانكم هذا حتى أرسل إليكم وإن رأيتمونا هزمنا القوم ووطعناهم فلا تبرهوا هذا حتى أرسل إليكم." If you see us nothing to pieces by birds, do not leave this position of yours. Still I stand for you, and it is that we have defeated the enemy and fallen on them. Do not research your position till I stand for you. With the assignment of this sword and locating it on the mountainside and the influence of those military orders, Al-Anzur blocked the only way that might lead the enemy speedily to the rear of Muslim ranks and might even enable them to surround them by forming a circle. Ya. أي نعم. The assignment of post and responsibility for the with the assignment of this score and locating it on the mountainside and the institution of those strict military orders, Allah blocked the only way that may lead the Order city to the rear of Muslim ranks and might even enable them to surround them by forming a circle. The assignment of post and responsibilities for the rest of the army were performed by the Prophet as follows. On the right wing he appointed Al-Mundir bin Amr radiallahu anhu. On the left he appointed Al-Zubair bin Al-Awam radiallahu anhu. Al-Mir al-Miqdad bin Aswad radiallahu anhu assistant and supporter. It was also Zubair's responsibility to stop Khalid bin Walid's horsemen. Allah selected the top and most courageous group to be in the front line of the army. They were notable for their readiness, alertness, and bravery, and estimated to be equal to the thousands of men. It was it was a wise and carefully laid plan which revealed the high skills of military leadership the Prophet ﷺ possessed. No other leader could have drawn a more accurate or wise plan. Although he approached the site later than the enemy, he managed to occupy better positions. He made the rocky mountainside to function as a shield for the army's rear and right side. He was able, by blocking the only critical gap on the side, to provide additional maximum protection for the rear as well as the left wing, for fear of possible defeat, and to deter the Muslims from fleeing, in which case they would fall easy prisoners in the hands of the enemy. He chose a high place for military camp. Moreover, strategic site of this sort would surely inflict heavy losses on the politics if they thought of approaching or occupying his position. In further step, he reduced the enemy to a narrow scope of choice when they were cornered for comfort in geographically low positions that would avail them nothing of the benefit of any possible victory. At the same time, they would not be able to escape the pursuit of the Muslim in case victory sided with the latter. To make up for the quantitative shortage in fighting personnel, he chose a picked body of fighters to stand at the front. The army of the Prophet was thus fully mobilized on the morning of Saturday, Shawwal 7, 3 AH after Hijrah. Allah's Messenger implanted the spirit of bravery among his armed forces. Allah's Messenger forbade the Muslim to start the fight without having an order from him. He then wore two armors, a front armor and a back one. He urged his companions to fight and stimulated them to show stamina and firmness at fight. He steered to instill the spirit of boldness and bravery in them, to arouse his companions, and in order to stand fast in the fight. He took a sharp sword, held it in his hand, and called out unto his companions and said, "Who is to take this sword and give it its proper due?" Many set out to take it. Some of them were Ali bin Abi Talib, Zubair bin Awam, and Umar bin Khattab, radiallahu anhu, but it was granted to none. Abu Dujana Sammak bin Kharsha, radiallahu anhu, inquired, "O Messenger of Allah, what is true?" Prophet said, it is to strike the enemy's faces with it till it was bent. So Abu Dujana, radiallahu anhu, said, "O Messenger of Allah, I will take it along with this due," and he was given the sword. Abu Dujan radiallahu anhu was a man of courage who used to swagger at war. He had a red band which he wore around his head. Whenever he wore it, everybody knew that he was determined to fight to death. Therefore, as soon as Abu Dujan radiallahu anhu took the Prophet's sword, he banded his head and started walking proudly among the fighters. Allah watching him said, "This is a sort of walking that Allah hates except in such a situation." The position of the Meccan army. The relentless applied a system The positioning of the Meccan army. The idolaters applied a system of roles in the mobilization of their army. The general leadership of the army was entrusted to Abu Sufyan Sakhr bin Harb, who will be in the center position of the army. Khalid bin Walid was on the right wing, whereas Ikrima, the son of Abu Jahl, was on the left. Safwan bin Umayyah was in charge of infantrymen. The Achas were under the command of Abdullah bin Abi Rabia. As for the standard, a squad of Bani Abdudar was in charge to be a. Thus was the distribution of the posts of the army ever since. Abdul Manaf already assigned them. This assignment had been inherited from Qusay bin Khalaf, as we have previously pointed out in this book. No one had the right to compete with them for it. It was consistent with their traditions that they inherited from their ancestors. Abu Sufyan, the general leader, reminded his men, the standard bearers, of what had happened to the Quraysh on the day of Badr when their standard bearer Adnadr bin al-Harith was captured. In attempt to evoke their anger and enmity to the Muslims, he said, O Bani Abdudar, you have been assigned bearers of our standard, and you know that the standard is the first thing that the enemy attacks. Should it fall, we fall down too. Therefore, I say either you are guaranteed safety or leave it for us, and we will certainly satisfy you that task. Abu Sufyan's attempt seemed to be fruitful, for his speech made Bani Abdudar so extremely angry that they detained him and almost attacked him for that. Addressing him, they said, You want us to deliver you the custodianship of the standard? Tomorrow, when we fight them, you will witness our deeds. As a matter of fact, they fought bravely and remained firm in defense of the standard till they were all killed. Political strategies of Quraysh. A little time before the breakout of the battle, the Quraysh made some effort to sow the seeds of discord and dispute among the Muslims. First, Abu Sufyan sent to the helpers a message saying, Leave us alone to fight our cousins and do not interfere. If you stand aside, we will not fight you, for fighting you is not a target of ours. But that attempt proved to be fruitless. What could such a wicked scheme do to those whose faith was as solid and firm as mountains? The helper's reply was undoubtedly disappointing and contrary to Abu Sufyan's expectations. The zero hour was due. The two parties drew nearer, not losing any hope by the first failure. Quraysh made another attempt for the same goal, but now with the assistance of a trader called Abu Amir al-Fasik, whose name was Abdul Amir bin Saifi. He was called a monk, but Allah nicknamed him al-Fasik, that is evildoer, desolate, as he was the head of Al-Aus in Al-Jahiliyyah. He could not tolerate Islam when it came. And announced his enmity to Allah's Messenger in public. He left Medina for the Quraysh in Makkah to rally them against Allah's Messenger and urged them to start the fight against him. He claimed that he was obeyed and esteemed by his people, and that as soon as they saw him come, they would join him immediately. So he went to the slaves of the people of Makkah and the missionary tribe members among the Muslims. He called out unto his people until they recognized him and said, O kinfolk of Aus, I am Abu Amir. The reply was, No eyes of anybody shall be comforted by viewing you. O fast, hearing them say so, he said, My people must have been afflicted by an evil after my departure. Therefore, when the fight broke out, he fought them fiercely and pelted his people with stones. That was the second attempt of Quraysh to sow the seeds of discord among people of faith. This, however, revealed the great terror that was cast in the hearts of Qurayshites in spite of their supremacy in number and equipment. The assassination of Asadullah Hadillah of Allah, Hamza bin Abi Talib. Hamza's assassin Wahshi bin Harb described how he killed Hamza radiallahu anhu. He said, I was a slave working for Jubair bin Mut'im, whose paternal uncle Tumaima bin Abi was injured at the Battle of Badr. So when the Quraysh marched to Uhud, Jubair said to me to kill Hamza, the uncle of Muhammad, then we shall be motivated. So I marched with the people to Uhud, and I am an Abyssinian man who is an expert with the Abyssinian spear. So when the two parties fight, I set out seeking Hamza. I saw him a minute fighting. He was like a white and a black streaked camel, striking severely with his sword, and no one could stand in his way. The Allah when I was getting ready and trying to seize the key opportunity to scare him, hiding sometimes behind a tree or a rock, hoping that he might pull nearer and be within him. Towards him, when Hamza examined him, he said, come on, O son of the clitoris cutter. There used to be a circumciser. Then he strike one strong stroke that could hardly miss his head. Then I balanced my spear and shot it two returns after till I was pointing with it. Then I speared him and it went down into his stomach and issued out between his legs. Anyway, he attempted moving towards me, but he was overcome by his wound. I left him there with a spear instead till he died. Then I came to him, pulled out my spear, and behind the face of the camp, I stayed there and did not go out, for he was the only one I saw. I killed him The Achas' fatal mistake. While the small army of Islam was recording the second absolute and clear victory over the Meccans, which was no less in splendor and glory than the first one at Badr, the majority of the Achas on the mountainside committed a fatal mistake that turned the whole situation upside down and constituted a source of heavy loss among the Muslims. It has almost brought about the murder of the Prophet and left a very bad impression on the fame and dignity they deservedly earned at the Battle of Badr. We have already spoken about the positive orders given to the archers to hold on to their position whatever the causes the battle adopt. In spite of those strict orders and their leaders, Abdullah bin Jubair warning 40 archers, they held their post enticed by the two soon raw victory as well as worldly greed for the spoils of war. The others, however, 9 in number and Abdullah the leader, decided to abide by the Prophet's order and stay where they were until they were given leave or killed to the last. Consequently, the rear of the Muslim army was left inadequately defended. Khalid bin Walid cut off the rear. The sharp-minded Khalid bin Walid seized the opportunity to turn swiftly around to the rear of the Muslims' army and encompass them, killing Ibn Jubayr and his group. They fell promptly upon the rear of the Muslims and his horsemen, uttered a shout that signaled the new military development. The British returned once again to counterattack the Muslims, and a later woman called Umrah bint al-Qama al-Hardiya rushed the standard lying on the earth, picked it up and raised it. The Lutherans gathered together around the standard and called out unto the one another till they encircled the Muslims and stood fast to fight again. The Muslims consequently became trapped between the two barriers. Allah was then among a small group of fighters, 9 numbers at the rear of the army, watching the battle and braving the Muslim fighters. Khalid and his men took him by utter surprise and obliged him to follow either of two options. One, to flee for his life and abandon his army to its doomed end, or to take action at the risk of his life, rally the ranks of the Muslims again, and work their way through the hills of Uhud towards the compassed army. The genius of Allah is fearless, and much less courage made him opt for the second course. He raised his voice, calling out unto his companions, O servants of Allah. He did that though he knew that his loud voice would be heard by the Royalists before it was heard by the Muslims. He called out unto them, risking his life in this delicate situation. The Royalists recognized him and reached his position even before the other Muslims could do so. The weakened position of the Muslims. The encompassment of the Muslims revealed three categories of people. The first group was of those who were only interested in themselves and they went so mad that they fled. They left the battlefield and did not know what happened to others. Some of this group fled as far as Medina, some others went up the mountain. The second Muslim group was of those who returned to the battle but mixed with the idolaters in such a way that they could not recognize one another. Consequently, some of them were killed by mistake. It was stated that Al-Bukhari stated in Al-Bukhari that Aisha said, on the Nufur, the Lutas were utterly defeated. Iblis Satan then called out, O servant of Allah, beware the rear, that the enemy is approaching from behind. So those who were at the front turned back and fought the ones who were behind. Then Hudayfa caught sight of his father Al-Yaman about to be killed by other Muslims. So he said, O servant of Allah, beware, this is my father, this is my father. But they did not part him with him till he was killed. Therefore then asked, May Allah forgive you. Urwa, who narrated from Aisha radiallahu anhu, said, May Allah from that time on Hudayfa has always been blessed and wealthy till he died. That was because he forgave them and refused to take any blood money for his father's murder, but recommended that it be spent in charity. The Muslim group suffered from great bewilderment, and disorder prevailed among them. A lot of them got lost and did not know where to go. At this awkward time, they heard someone calling, Muhammad has been killed. This news made them even more bewildered and nearly senseless. Their morale broke down or almost in a great number of individuals. Some of them stopped fighting as slacker and cast down their weapons. Others thought of getting in fighting with Abdullah bin Ubay, the head of the Hebrews, and seeking assistance to fetch them a security pledge from Abu Sufyan. Anas bin Radiallahu passed by those people who were shedding of fear and panic, and inquired, What are you waiting for? They said, Allah's Messenger had been killed. Oh, what do you live for after Muhammad? What do you live for after Muhammad? Come and die for what Allah's Messenger has died for. Then he said, Oh Allah, I apologize for what these people, that is Muslims, have done, and I swear I disapprove of what the idolaters have perpetrated. Then he moved on till he was encountered by Sa'ad bin Muhammad radiallahu, who asked him, Where to Abu Umar? Anas radiallahu anhu replied, How fine the scent of the paradise is! I smell it here in Uhud. He went on and fought against the idolaters till he was killed. Nobody but his sister could recognize his dead body. It has been cut and stabbed by over 80 swords, arrows, or spears. It was by the tip of his finger that she, after the battle, recognized him. David bin Ad-Dahba called out to his people, saying, O kinfolk of helpers, if Muhammad were killed, Allah is everything and he never dies. Fight in defense of your faith. Allah will help you and you will be victorious. A group of helpers joined him and all set out and attacked the Battle of Khalid's horsemen. He kept on fighting till he and his companions were killed. An immigrant passed by a helper who was besmeared by blood. He said, O fellow, have you heard of Muhammad's murder? The helper answered, If Muhammad were killed, then he must have completed the delivery of the message. So fight in the defense of your religion. With such boldness and encouragement, the Muslims soon recovered their spirit, came around to their senses, and resisted the idea of surrender or contacting the hypocrite Abdullah bin Ubay. They took up arms and resumed the fight, attempting to make way to the headquarters, particularly after the news of the Prophet's death had been falsified. The glad tidings strengthened their absolute soul and helped them to manage to break off the military blockade and concentrate their forces in an immune place to resume a relentless and fierce fight against the plebeians. The third group of Muslims was of those who cared for nothing except the Prophet ﷺ. At the head of them were notable companions like Abu Bakr, Umar bin Khattab, Ali bin Abi Talib, and others, who hastened to protect the Prophet ﷺ through unrevealed devotion. The battle intensifies around Allah's Messenger. As those groups of Muslims were receiving the blows of the idolaters and still resisting, the fight flared up around Allah's Messenger, who had only 9 people around him. We have already mentioned that when the idolaters started encircling them, there were only 9 people around Allah's Messenger, and as soon as he called out to the Muslims, Come on, I'm the Messenger of Allah, the idolaters heard his voice and recognized him. So they turned back and attacked him with all their power before any of his companions ran onto his head. A violent and intense struggle broke out between the 9 Muslims and the idolaters, during which peerless love, self-sacrifice, bravery, and heroism were revealed. Muslim, with the authority of Anas bin Malik narrated that the Allah along with 7 helpers and 2 immigrants was confined to a trap. When the idolaters attacked him, Allah then said, He who pushes back these idolaters will be housed in paradise, or he will be my companion in paradise. One of the helpers stepped forward and fought the idolaters in defense of the Prophet till he was killed. Then they attacked the Messenger again. The same process was repeated again and again until all the 7 helpers were killed. Then Allah said to his 2 Quraysh companions, we have not done justice to our companions. The last of those 7 helpers was Umrah bin Yazid bin As-Sakar, who kept on fighting till his wound neutralized him and he fell down. The most awkward hour in the Messenger's life. After the fall of Ibn Sakan, Allah remained alone with only those 2 Quraysh, according to Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Abu Tuman said at that time, There was none with the Prophet ﷺ except Talha bin Ubaidullah and Sa'ad bin Abi Waqas. That was the most awkward and dangerous hour for the Prophet ﷺ, and a golden opportunity for the leaders who promptly took advantage of it. They concentrated the attack on the Prophet ﷺ and looked forward to killing him. Utbah bin Abi Waqas pelted him with stones. One of the stones struck his face. His lower right incisor tooth was injured. His lower lip was wounded. He was also attacked by Abdullah bin Shihab az-Zuhri, who injured his forehead. Abdullah bin Qamiha. Qamiha means a humiliated woman, who was an obstinate, strong horseman, striking violently on his shoulder with his sword. And that blow hurt Allah for over a man, though it was not strong enough to break his two pieces of armor. He laid a heavy blow on his neck. It was so strong that 2 rings of his iron-ringed helmet penetrated to his cheek. Take this stroke from me, I am Ibn Kamiha, he said while striking the messenger of Allah sallallahu with his sword. Allah replied while he was wiping the blood flowing on his face, I beg Allah to humiliate you. In the narration of Al-Bukhari and Muslim, it is stated that when his scissor broke and his head was injured, he started wiping the blood of it and saying, how can a people who cut the face of the Prophet and broke his teeth, he who calls them to worship Allah, how can such people thrive or be successful? About that incident, Allah, glory is to him, sent down a Quranic verse saying, لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٌ وَيَتُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ وَيُؤَدِّبُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. Not for you, Muhammad, but for Allah is the decision, whether He turns in mercy to pardon them or punishes them. For they are dhalimun, the disobedient, polytheists and wrongdoers. This is Surah 3, verse 138. Verse 128. At-Tabarani said that Prophet ﷺ said, Allah's wrath is great on those who wounded the face of His Messenger. He observed silence for a short while and then resumed saying, Allahumma aghfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. O Allah, forgive my people for they did not know. In Sahih Muslim it said that Allah ﷺ said, Rabbi aghfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. My Lord, forgive my people for they have no knowledge. Ainam. In the Shifa book by Al-Qadi Al-Iyad, it's related that the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma hadi qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. O Allah, guide people for they have no knowledge. It is quite certain that killing the Prophet ﷺ was their primary aim, but 2 Quraysh had Sa'd bin Abi Waqas and Talha bin Ubaidullah, who showed great bravery and rare courage and fought so fiercely and boldly that though there were only 2 who were able to stop the idolaters short of realizing their aim, they were of the best archers and kept on fighting in defense of Allah's Messenger until the whole squad of idolaters was driven off him. So Allah emptied his quiver of arrows and said to Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, shoot an arrow, Sa'ad, may my father and my mother be ransom for you. The Prophet had never said such a thing about his parents except in the case of Sa'ad, a privilege granted to him for his efficiency. In a version of by Jabir authorized by An-Nisai concerning the attitude of Talha bin Ubaidullah towards the idolaters gathering around Allah's Messenger when they were only some helpers with him. Jabir said, when the idolaters reached him, Allah said, who will suffice us their evils? Let's fight them back. Talha said, I will. Then Zubair mentioned the advance of the helpers to fight and how they were killed, one after another, in a similar way to Muslim narration. When all the helpers were killed, Talha decided to fight as much as the other 11 ones until his hand was shut and his fingers were cut off. So he said, be they cut off. The Prophet said, if you had said in the name of Allah, the angels would have raised you up before the people's very eyes. Then he said, Allah drove the idolaters off them. And Al-Ikril, a book by Hakim, he said that Talha had sustained 39 or 35,000, and his finger, that is the forefinger, and the one next to it, paralyzed. Al-Bukhari reported that Qais bin Abi Hazim said, I saw the hand of Talha paralyzed. That was because he protected the Prophet with it during the Battle of Uhud. At-Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah reported the Prophet then said about Talha radiallahu anhu, he who desires to see a martyr walking on the ground, let him look at Talha bin Ubaidullah. Abu Dawood at-Tayalisi reported that Aisha radiallahu anha said, whenever Uhud day, that is Battle, was mentioned, Abu Bakr used to say that was Talha's day, that is Battle. Abu Bakr recited a verse of praise about him, O Talha bin Abdullah, rise for you as water springs are due to deer to drink from. At the awkward and most delicate circumstances, Allah, glory is to him, sent down his invisible help. In Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, it is reported that Sa'ad said, I saw Allah on Uhud day with 2 men, dressed in white, defending him fiercely. I have never seen similar to them either before Uhud nor after it. And the version, it means to say that they were Gabriel and Michael and Mikhail, the companions around the Messenger. All those events happened in no time. If the Prophet's allied companions had realized the grave situation immediately, they would have rushed into the spot and would not have let him sustain this wound. Unfortunately, the good day after Allah had been wounded and six of the helpers killed. The seventh was severely wounded and desperately fighting in defense of the Prophet. However, as soon as they arrived, they encircled the Prophet with their bodies and weapons and were alert enough to prevent the enemies from reaching him. The first one who returned to give help was his companion of the cave, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. In a version by Aisha radiallahu anha recorded in Ibn Hibban Sahih, she related that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said on the day of Uhud, when all the people had left the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I was the first to go back and see him. Before him I saw a man fighting to shield him from the enemies. I said to myself, I wish he were Talha. Let my father and my mother be ransom for you, O Allah. Let him be Talha, let my parents be ransom for you. When the way was overtaken by Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah, who was then moving as swiftly as bird. We both rushed to dress the Prophet's wound. There we found Talha suffering from serious wounds before Allah said, see to your brother, for he is in more need. I noticed that the two rings of the iron ring helmet had penetrated his cheek, so I set out to take them out. But Abu Ubaidah reminded by Allah, Abu Bakr, I request you to let me do it myself. Fearing to hurt the Prophet, he started pulling one of the two rings out very slowly and carefully with his mouth. Then he pulled the arrow out by his mouth. Two consequently. His front tooth came out. Then I proceeded to pull the second out. But Abu Ubaidah requested me to leave it. Abu Bakr, I beg you by Allah to let me do it. He pulled the second ring very slowly and carefully with his mouth till it came out. Allah said, see to your brother, for he is in more need. We approached Allah to tend to him, but found that he had some 10 sword wounds in his body. This showed how defensively Talha had fought and struggled on that day. At those awkward moments of that day, a group of Muslim heroes gathered around the Prophet forming a shield to protect him from the demonstrators. Some of them Abu Dujana, Musa bin Umair, Ali bin Abi Talib, Sahil bin Hunayf, Malik bin Sinan, the father of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Umamara Nusayba bin Daqab al-Maziniya, Qatada bin Abu Numan, Umar bin Khattab, Hatib bin Abi Balta, and Abu Talha. The adulterers increased the intensity of battle. The number of adulterers was steadily increasing, and their attacks naturally got severer. Their drive increased to an extent that Allah fell into one of the holes dug and designed by Abu Amir al-Fasik to be used as traps, with his knee wounded. Ali helped him by giving him a hand up. Talha bin Ubaidullah helped him until he could stand upright. Nafi bin Jubair said, I had an immigrant say, I have witnessed the Battle of Uhud and watched arrows being hurled from all directions at the Prophet ﷺ. None of them hit him. Abdullah ibn Shihab al-Zuhri said, guide me to Muhammad ﷺ. By Allah, if I don't kill him, I will not want to live. Although Allah ﷺ was next to him, alone but he did not see him. Safwan and other police blamed him for not attacking him. But Abdullah saw that he did not see him, the Prophet ﷺ, and added that he might be immune to the attempts on his life. He also said that 4 of them pledged to make a fresh attempt and kill him, but to no avail. Unprecedented heroism. The Muslim demonstrated unprecedented heroism and marvelous sacrifice. Abu Talha, for instance, shielded Allah's Messenger by his body and used his chest to protect him against the enemy arrows. Anas related that on the day of Uhud, when people left the Prophet Abu Talha was a skillful sort of archer who would shoot so many arrows that he broke 2 or 3 bows that day. When a man passed along with the quiver full of arrows, the Prophet would say, give the arrows to Abu Talha. Then when the Prophet watched people shooting, Abu Talha would say, may my father and my mother be ransom for your safety. Not go too close lest an arrow of theirs will hit you. I will rather die than see you hurt. Abu Dujana stood before Allah and used to protect him from the arrows by his back. Atib bin Balta followed. Utbah bin Waqas, who broke the honorable insignia of the Prophet struck him with the sword, cracked his head, and took his horse and sword. Sa'd bin Waqas was soon to kill his brother Utbah, but he could not. However, Hatib could. Sahil bin Hunayf, a hero archer, who pledged to die in the cause of Allah, also played a prominent part in the Battle of Uhud. Allah himself was involved in shooting arrows. In a version by Qatada, bin Nu'man, that Allah shot so many arrows that the 2 ends of his bow bent. So Qatada bin Nu'man took it to remain with him for good. On that day, his eyes was so hard that it fell down onto his chest. But Allah put it in his socket with his son, and it became better and more sharp-sighted of the two. On that day, Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu kept on fighting until his mouth was swollen. He sustained over 20 wounds, some in his leg making him lame. Malik bin Sinan radiallahu anhu, the father of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, radiallahu anhu, sucked the blood of the Prophet's cheek till he cleaned. The Prophet said, spit it out, but Malik said, by Allah, I will never spit it. Then he set out to fight. The Prophet then said, if you want to see a man of the paradise, let him look at this one. No sooner had he resumed fighting than he was martyred in the thick of the battle. Umara participated in the fight too. She encountered Ibn Kami in combat and sustained a slight wound on her shoulder. But she herself also struck him with her sword several times, but he survived because he was wearing two armors. She, however, went on striking him until she had received 12 wounds. Musab bin Umair in his turn fought fiercely and voluntarily defending the Prophet against the attacks of Ibn Kamiyah and his fellows. He was carrying the standard with his right hand. In the process of fighting, he was cut off. So he grabbed the standard in his left hand till this was also amputated. So he knelt down and hit it with his chest and neck. Ibn Kamiyah then killed him, mistaking him for Allah on account of the semblance of an appearance. Only then did Ibn Kamiyah shout, Muhammad has been killed. The room of the dead of the Prophet and its effect on the battle. The rumor of the death of the Prophet ﷺ is effect on the battle. No sooner had Ibn Kamiyah uttered that the Communion sentence that the Christianity spread among Muhammad's followers, and their morale was drastically reduced. Consequently, confusion and a miserable state of disorder prevailed among them, while the rumors managed to adversely act among the Muslims. It lessened the sharp impact of the assault of the polytheists, who came to believe that they did really achieve their final objective, and so they turned towards maltreating the dead bodies. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu considered his position in the battle. When Musa was killed, Allah delivered the standard to Ali bin Abi Talib. Ali, in conjunction with the other companions, went on fighting bravely and set marvelous examples of heroism, courage, and endurance in both defense and attack. Then last Messenger made his way to his encircled army. Ka'ab bin Malik, who was the first one to recognize the approaching Prophet shouted as loudly as he could, O folks of Muslims, be cherished. Allah's Messenger is here. But Allah's Messenger saying to him to stop lest his position should be located by the idolaters. Upon hearing the shout, the Muslim immediately retreated toward the source of the shout, which brought about 30 companions to gather around the Prophet With this assembled number of his companions, Allah started drawing a plan to draw to the hillocks nearby. Hostility of the enemy grew fiercer than ever with the aim of foiling the plan of the Muslim withdrawal. The attempts, however, proved to be fruitless due to the heroic disturbance of the lamps of Islam. Uthman bin Abdullah bin al-Mughira, one of the enemy horsemen, progressed towards Allah while saying, either kill him or I will be killed. Allah moved to encounter him, but his mare tripped into some holes. So Al-Harith bin Saima fought with him and struck his leg, making him lame. Then he finished him off, took his weapons and caught up Allah. But later on, another Makan horseman called Abdullah bin Jabir attacked Al-Harith bin Asimama and struck him on the shoulder with his sword, and he was carried to the camp of the Muslims suffering from serious wounds. Yet he did not escape death, for Abu Dujana, the red-haired banded hero. Ayuko? There was another Makan horseman called Abdullah bin Jabir attacked Al-Harith bin Asimama and struck him on the shoulder with his sword, and he was carried on the camp of the Muslims suffering from serious wounds. Yet he did not escape death, for Abu Dujana, the red banded hero, struck him with a heavy blow, cutting off his head. During this bitter fight, a desire to sleep overwhelmed the Muslims that was a security and tranquility to help enslaved Muslims, as the Quran spoke in this context. Abu Talha said, I was one of those who were possessed by the desire to sleep on the day of Uhud. On that day, my sword fell from my hand several times. Again and again it fell down, and again I picked it up. In a regular withdrawal and with a great bravery and boldness, the Muslims finally retreated to the cover of Mountain Uhud. Then the rest of the army followed them to that safe position. In this manner, the genius of Muhammad fueled that of Khalid bin Walid. Ubay bin Khalaf is killed. Ibn Hisaq related, when Allah was going up the hill, he was followed by Ubay bin Khalaf, who was saying, where is Muhammad? Either kill him or be killed. The companion said, O Messenger of Allah, do you mind if one of us fight with him? But Allah said, leave him. So when he drew nearer, Allah took the spear from Al-Harith bin Asima and shivered violently in such a way that he made all of them scatter in all directions. Then he observed his collarbone drew a gap between the wide opening of the armor and the part of his neck enclosed by it. He speared him in that spot. The effect of the stroke was so strong that it made him roll off his horse over and over. When he returned to the Quraysh, they found that he only had a small scratch on his neck. So when the blood congealed, he said, "By Allah, Muhammad has killed me." Hearing him say so, they said, "By Allah, you are afraid of death. By Allah, you are possessed by devil." He replied, "You already told me when we were in Mecca, I will kill you. By Allah, by Allah, had he spat on me, he would have killed me." Eventually, the name of Allah breathed his last at a place called Sarif, where they were taking him back to Medina, to Mecca, in a version by Abu Waswad, on the authority of Urwa radiallahu anhu. He was mourning like a bull and saying, "By the one in whose hand is my soul, if what I am suffering from now were distributed among the people of Dhul Majaz, it will have caused them all to die." Talha radiallahu anhu leads the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the withdrawal of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam up the cover of the mountain. A big rock blocked his way. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tried to mount it, but having worn a short, heavy armor and being seriously wounded, he could not ascend it. Readily enough, Talha radiallahu anhu sat in a position that enabled the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to stand on his back. Then he lifted him up until he stood on it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then said, "Talha, after this job, is eligible for it paradise." Well, Mutilation of the martyrs. That was the last attack made by the idolaters against the Prophet ﷺ, being almost certain of his death. The idolaters returned to their camp and started preparation to go back to Mecca. Some of them involved themselves in mutilating the killed Muslims, and so did their women. Women and men cut off the ears and noses and genitals of the martyrs. They even cut open their bellies. Hind bin Usba, for instance, ripped open the liver of Hamza radiallahu anhu and chewed it, but finding it unpleasant, she spat it out. She even made the ears and noses of Muslims into ankles and necklaces. Two incidents occurred during the last hours of the fight, which revealed for certain how far the Muslims were ready to fight and sacrifice in the way of Allah. Number 1. Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu anhu said, "I was one of those Muslims who fought in Uhud and witnessed the police acts of barbarity in mutilating the dead bodies, but I passed them because I couldn't stand it. Then I saw a heavily armored idolater passing through the Muslims and saying, 'Gather them up and combine them in the way that sheep are gathered and slaughtered.' Similarly, I saw an armed Muslim waiting for him. I walked towards them till I stood behind him. Comparing both of them, I found that the disbeliever was better than the other in arms and figure. The Muslim thrust at the disbeliever with his sword and went down up to his hip, splitting him into two. When Muslim unveiled his face, he said, 'What about that, Ka'b? I'm Abu Dujana.'" Number 2. Some Muslim women came to the battlefield when the fight was over. Anas radiallahu anhu said, "I saw Aisha bint Abu Bakr with Sulaim. Their garments were gathered up so I could see their ankles. They carried water bags on their shoulders and emptied them into the mouths of people. Then they would go back to fill them and come back to do the same." Umar said, she, Salih, one of the Ansar women, carried water bags to us on the day of Uhud. Ayman radiallahu anha was one of those Muslim women who saw the defeated Muslim fighters. Entering Medina, he started drawing dust at their faces and rebuffingly saying, "Here is a spinning wheel, take it and give up carrying swords." Then she faced to the battlefield. There she watered the wounded Hiban bin al-Arqa shot an arrow at her. She fell down and became exposed, seeing that the enemy of Allah burst into laughter. That sight upset Allah, so he gave Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas an arrow lacking an arrowhead and said, "Shoot it." And Sa'ad shoot it, it pierced the adversary's throat. He fell down and some part of his body were revealed. Allah then laughed so much that his molars could be seen and said, "Sa'ad avenged her." May Allah respond his supplications. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu reaches the trail. As soon as Allah's Messenger reached the trail, Ali bin Abi Talib who went out and filled his water container with water from Al-Miras. Al-Miras is said to be a hollow concave rock containing plenty of water. It was also said that it is a water spring at the Uhud mountain. Anyway, Ali brought that water to Allah's Messenger to drink. Finding that it smelled bad, he refused to drink it, but only washed the blood from his face and poured some of it over his head, saying, "Allah's wrath is great on those who injured his messenger's face." Sahel said, "By Allah, I know who washed the wound of Allah's messenger and who poured out water for him and what substance his wound was treated with. His daughters Fatima washed it, whereas Ali poured water out of the container." The Messenger reaches the trail. As soon as Sallallahu reached the trail, Ali bin Abi Talib went out and filled his water container with water from Al-Mihras. Al-Mihras is said to be a hollow concave rock containing plenty of water. It was also said that it is a water spring at the Uhud mountain. Anyway, Ali brought the water to Allah to drink, finding that it smelled bad. He refused to drink it, but only washed the blood from his face and poured some of it over his head, saying, "Allah's wrath is great on those who injured his messenger's face." Sahal said, "By Allah, I know who washed the wounds of Allah and who poured out water for him and what substance his wound was treated with. His daughter Fatima washed it, whereas Ali poured water out of the container. When Fatima realized that water increased the flow of blood, she took a piece of straw mat, burnt it a little, and struck it into the wound, so blood ceased flowing. Muhammad bin al-Masr brought his fresh water to drink. The Prophet drank and supplicated Allah to provide him with good, owing to the wounds and their bad effect on his body. Allah led his followers in the Dhuhr prayer in a sitting posture, and so did the Muslims. When the prostration of the adulterers for departure came to an end, Abu Sufyan went up the mountain and called out, "Is Muhammad among you?" They did not answer him. Then he asked him, "Is Ibn Abi Quhafa and Abu Bakr among you?" They did not answer. He asked again, "Is Umar ibn Khattab among you?" They did not answer him. But the Prophet forbid them answering him, only asked about those three. That is because he and his people knew quite well that the call to Islam depended on large degree on those men. Abu Sufyan as for those three, we have revealed you of. Umar could not hear but talking, so he said, "O enemy of Allah, those whom you have just mentioned, I tell you that they are still alive. Allah has maintained what you hate." Abu Sufyan answered, "The mutilation of your dead is something I did not order it, but it did not displease me." Then he shouted, "Hubal, an idol, let it be sublime." The Prophet said, "Why do you not reply? What shall we say?" They asked him, "Say, Allah is more sublime and exalted and mightier as well." He said, "Al-Uzza, that is an idol, is ours, but you have no Izzah, might. Why do you not reply?" The Prophet said, "What shall we say?" They inquired. He said, Allah is our protector, but you have no protector." Abu Sufyan said, "Well done, today's revenge day for the day of Badr. This for that war is attended with alternate success." Umar's reply was, "No, they are not the same. Our dead are housed in paradise, but yours are in the fire." Then Abu Sufyan said, "Come on, Umar." Allah said, "Go and see what the matter is." He went there. Abu Sufyan asked him, "I ask you by Allah's name to tell me the truth. Have we killed Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" Muhammad said, "Oh Allah, no, and now he is listening to your words." He said, "For me, you are more truthful than Ibn Kamiyah and even more reliable." The appointment to meet again at Badr. Ibn Ishaq said, when Abu Sufyan and those who were with him were leaving, he called out notifying, "We will meet again at Badr next year." Allah said to one of his men, "Say yes, it's an appointment for both of us," verifying the movement of the relatives. Later on, Allah dispatched Ali bin Abi Talib to track them. He said to him, "Pursue them and see what they are going to do and what they intend. If they dismount horses and ride on camels back, this means that they are leaving for Mecca. But if they ride horses and lead camels unmounted, they are headed for Medina. By the one in whose hands my soul is, if they attack Medina, I will march to them there and I will fight them." Ali radiallahu anhu said, I went out and tracked them to see what they were up to. I saw them mounting camels and leaving their horses unmounted. They were heading for Makkah, checking on the dead and wounded. After the departure of the Quraysh, people went out to check the identity of the dead and the wounded. Then Abi Thabit radiallahu anhu said, Allah sent me on the day of Uhud to seek Sa'id bin Abi Rabi and said, when you see him, say, peace be upon you. From me and say to him, Allah says, how do you feel? Zayd radiallahu anhu said, I started rechecking and the dead until I came across Sa'ad when he was dying, with about 70 sword wounds plus a spear and an arrow in his body. So I said, oh Sa'ad, Allah sends you his greetings and says, peace be upon you. Tell me, how do you feel? Sa'ad said, and let peace be upon Allah to tell him I smell the scent of the paradise and tell the helpers, my people, we shall not be excused before Allah if Allah is hurt and your eyes are blinking. Then he died. They come across Al-Usayrim, the Amr bin Thabit, whom they had already urged to embrace Islam but refused. They saw him among the wounded on the verge of close death. What has he come here for? We have parted with him and he was still obstinate to accept Islam as his religion. They asked him, what made you come here? It is out of zeal to defend your people, or is it because of an inclination to Islam? He said, personally, an inclination to Islam. I believe in Allah and his messenger. I have fought with Allah's messenger till I got what you see, and then he eventually died. Then they told Allah's messenger about him. Hearing that, he said he is one of the inhabitants of paradise, although he had not offered one single prayer. Later Abu Hurairah, Qazman, who was found among the wounded, fought heroically and killed 7 or 8 idolaters. He was weakened by the wounds he sustained. They carried him to the locality of Bani Zufr. The Muslim gave him characteristics of the paradise, but he said, by Allah, I have fought out of the position of passion to my people. Had it not for that, I would have never fought. When his wounds worsened, he committed suicide. Allah he had already said, whenever he was mentioned to him, he is an inhabitant on fire. This is the end of those who fight for a national cause, or in a way other than that of raising up the word of Allah, though they fought under the banner of Islam, or even in the army of Allah or in his companions. Contrary to Ghazman, there was a Jew of Bani Talaba among the dead. He said to his people, all folk people of the Jews, by Allah, you have already known that it is necessary to support Muhammad. They said, today is Saturday. He said, there is no Saturday for you. He took his sword and the war equipment and said, if I were killed, the Prophet should be put to Muhammad's disposal. The next morning, he kept on fighting till he was killed. Allah said about him, Mukharik is the best Jew. Battle of the Martyrs. Allah supervised the Martyrs' battle and said, I will witness that anyone who is wounded on the way of Allah, Allah will resurrect him on the day of resurrection with his own bleeding liquid, which is blood like in color, but musk like in is insane. Some of the companions carried their dead to Medina, but Allah ordered that they should be sent back in order to be buried where they were killed. He ordered that they should not be washed but buried as they were after, stripping them of their armor and leather clothes. He used to bury every 2 or 3 martyrs together in one grave, and even join 2 men in one garment, while saying, who is more learned of the Quran, and he will commit him to add first. He will say witness to those on the day of resurrection. He buried both Abdullah bin Amr bin Haram and Amr bin Jamu in one grave due to the affection they used to have for each other. They made the body of Hanzala. They tossed it and found that it was on a spot nearby with water dripping off it. Allah told his companions that the angels were washing him and said, ask his wife. They asked her and she confirmed that he had been in a state of ceremonial impurity. That was why Hanzala was called Ghasir al-Malaika, as the one washed by the angels. When Allah saw how his uncle and foster brother Hamza who was mutilated, he was extremely grieved. When his aunt Safiya came to see her brother Hamza, Allah ordered her son Az-Zubair to send her away in order not to see what happened to her brother. She refused and said, but why would I go away? I have been informed that they have mutilated him. But so long as it is in the way of Allah, whatever happens to him suffices us. I say Allah is sufficient, and I will be patient if Allah wills. She approached, looked at him, and supplicated Allah for him, and said, to Allah will all belong, and to him will verily return. And she asked Allah to forgive him. Then Allah ordered that he should be buried with Abdullah bin Jash, who was his nephew as well as his foster brother. Ibn Mas'ud said, we have never seen Allah weeping as much as he did for Hamza bin Abi Talib. He directed him towards Al-Qibla, then he stood at his funeral and sobbed. The sight of the martyrs was extremely horrible and heartbreaking. Describing Hamza's funeral, Khabab said, no shawl long enough was available for Hamza except a strip shawl. When they covered his head with it, it was too short to cover his feet. Similarly, if they covered his feet, his head would be revealed. Ingine. Usichoke, hiyo kidogo tu. Mama Samira ni nani? The Messenger of Allah praised Allah and passed glory to him. Al-Imam Ahmad reported that on the day of Uhud, after the religious salaf, Allah said, Asturu hatta uthni ala Rabbi, Azza wa Jalla, line up so that I offered thanks and praise to my Lord, the Great and the Almighty. So they stood in rows behind him. Then he said, Allahumma laka alhamdu kulluhu, Allahumma la qabida lima basatta, ولا بأس لما قببت ولا هادي لمن أدللت ولا مدل لمن هديت ولا مؤتي لما منعت ولا يمان لما أعطيت ولا مقرب لما بدأت ولا مؤبد لما قربت. اللهم أبسط علينا من بركاتك ورحمتك وفضلك ورزقك. والله yours is the praise of all it. Well, no one can withhold what you permit or permit what you have to withhold. No one can guide whom you decree to go astray or make go astray the one whom you guide. No one can grant provision you have withheld, and no one can withhold what you grant. No one can near what you ordain to be distant or detach what you decree to be close. O Allah, grant us all of your blessing, mercy, favors and provisions. Allahumma inni as'aluka an-ni'ma al-muqim alladhi la yahullu wa la yazul. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-awna yawm al-ayla wa al-amna yawm al-khawf. Allahumma inni a'idhu bika min sharri ما أعطيتنا وشر ما منعتنا. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزنه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين. اللهم توفنا مسلمين وأحينا مسلمين والحقنا بالصالحين غير الخزايا ولا المفتونين. اللهم قاتل الكفار الذين يكذبون رسلك ويسدون عن سبيلك واجعل عليهم رزقك وعذابك. اللهم قاتل الكفر الذين أوتوا الكتاب إلى الحق. نعم. O Allah, ask you to grant me permanent bliss that neither changes nor vanishes. O Allah, you alone we seek for help at hardships. You alone we resort to for security on a day of terror. O Allah, to you alone I resort to protect us from the evil of what which you have given us and from the evil of that which you have withheld from us. O Allah, make us love faith and make it adorn our heart. Make display rebellion and disobedience detestable to us. Let us be among those who are rightly guided. O Allah, make us live as Muslims and cause us to die as Muslims, and make us join with the righteous but not with the disgrace and misled. O Allah, destroy the disbelievers who believe your messenger and divide from your righteous way. O Allah, let your punishment and your enmity befall the disbelievers. O Allah, destroy the disbelievers to whom you have given the book, O God of truth. Returning to Medina the display of love received after committing all matters to God, and after offering praise and supplication to Allah, went back to Medina. On his way back, matchless examples of love and devotion were revealed by the truthful women, believers in no way less great than the men's heroic deeds in the fight. Hannah bint Jash met Allah on his way back, and he announced the death of her brother, Abdullah ibn Jash anhu. To her, she said, to Allah we belong, and to him we shall return. Ask Allah forgiveness. Then he announced the death of her maternal uncle Hamza bin Abu Talib anhu. She said, to Allah we belong, and to him we shall return. I ask Allah forgiveness. But when he announced the death of her husband Mus'ab bin Umair anhu, to her she shouted and cried. Seeing her doing so, Allah said, the woman's husband is extremely dear to her. He passed by a woman of Bani Nadar, whose husband, father, and brother were all killed at Uhud. When their death announced, she said, how is Allah's messenger? They said, well, indeed, O mother of so and so, thanks to Allah, he is well and as good as you desire. She said, let me see him. They pointed to him. Seeing him, she said, all film musicians are nothing as long as you are safe. Sa'id bin Mu'adh came running to see the Prophet ﷺ. At that time, her son was holding the rein of his mare. Seeing his mother, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, Messenger of Allah, this is my mother. The Prophet ﷺ said, she is all welcome. And he stopped and waited for her. When she drew near, he consoled her for her son Amr bin Mu'adh, who had been killed. But he said, so as long as you are safe, I consider my position as nothing. Then Allah supplicated Allah for the relative of those who were killed at Uhud and said, cheer up, Sa'id, and be a good tidings to their kindred that all their people killed in the battle are comrades in paradise, and they are intercessors for all their kinsfolk. She replied, O Messenger of Allah, we are satisfied. Who will cry for them after this cheerful news? Then she resumed, saying, O Messenger of Allah, invoke Allah for those who stayed behind. He said, O Allah, keep sorrow away from their hearts and console them with their misfortune. Compensate those who stayed behind with goodness and welfare. The Messenger of Allah in Medina, in the evening of that day, that Saturday, the 7th of Shawwal, that year after Hijrah, the Messenger arrived in Medina. As soon as he reaches his house, he handed his sword to his daughter Fatima and said, O daughter, wash the blood of this sword. By Allah, it has been helpful to me today. Ali bin Abi Talib handed her his sword and said, and wash the blood of this sword too. By Allah, it has been helpful to me today. So Allah's Messenger said, Sahel bin Hunayf and Abu Dujana have been as courageous as you in the fight. The numbers of the dead, most of the narration confirm that 70 Muslims were killed, and the majority of these 65 were helpers. 41 of them were from Khazraj and 24 from Aus. This besides 1 Jew and 4 immigrants. As for the police, 22 of them were killed, but some versions speak of 37. Allah knows best. a state of emergency in Medina. On Saturday night, the 8th of Shawwal, and after their return from Uhud, the Muslims spent that night in a state of emergency despite the fact that they were utterly exhausted. They stayed on the alert and spent that night guarding the outlets and inlets of Medina. They were especially busy guarding the general leader, Al-Hanbali, for fear that some suspect would commit unexpected folly. The harmful Assad invasion. Al-Hanbali, on his part, spent the night pondering over the situation. He feared that the rulers might think, well, they were still on their way to Mecca, of reversing their way and dividing to Medina after they realized that they had availed nothing of that victory. They might regret and decide to invade Medina as consultation. Therefore, Allah was determined to pursue the Meccan army. The Prophet called out on the people and ordered them to march to counter the enemy of Islam. That was on Sunday morning, the next day after the Battle of Uhud, the 8th of Shawwal. He said, nobody will march the fight except those who have already participated in the fighting at Uhud. Abdullah bin Ubay said, I will march out with you. No, said the Prophet ﷺ. While the Muslims were suffering a lot from pain and deep anxiety, they responded to his call. Jabir bin Abdullah asked the Prophet ﷺ to allow him to join them in the fresh invasion, on the account that he has always been liking to witness all the battles that the Prophet ﷺ was involved in. He had not participated in Uhud because his father asked him to stay in Medina with his sisters, and he was granted his wish. The Muslims marched until they reached a place called Hamrul Asad, about 8 miles from Medina. He encamped there. In that place, Mabad bin Abi Mabad came to Allah and professed Islam. Some people say that he remained an adulterer. He simply decided to give the Messenger some advice out of obedience by a covenant between Khuza''s tribe and Bani Hashim. He said to Muhammad, by Allah, we feel great sorrow for what happened to you and to your companions. We really hope you will not suffer again. So the Messenger suggested that he should go to Abu Sufyan and discourage him from pursuing his evil intentions. The Messenger's fears of possible return of the idolaters proved to be absolutely true, for no sooner than had the idolaters dismounted and encamped at Ar-Rawa, a place that is 6 miles from Medina, they started approaching one another. A group of them said to one another, you did nothing, you broke down their first, but you first left them. There are still more distinguished men among them who will probably get up to fight you again, so let us go back and kill them and crush down their forces. It was in fact a hasty decision taken by shallow-minded people who misjudged the potential power and morale on both parties. That is why an eminent leader of Quraysh, Safwan bin Umayyah, tried to discourage people from pursuing that venture, saying, "O people, do not do such a thing, for I fear that he will gather up those who stayed behind and did not share in Uhud. Go back home as winners, for I am not sure of what turn the consequences will take if you get involved in such a fight. It might be against you in the end." Notwithstanding the weighty argument, the majority of the polytheists were determined to embark on that risky undertaking. Mabad bin Abu Mabad meanwhile met them and tried to discourage the danger of waiting in order to ruin their plan. He said, Muhammad has marched to meet you with a large host of fighters. I have never seen something similar to it before. He has gathered all the troops who have stayed behind and did not share any hold. They surely will regret that what they have missed and want to compensate it for it now. The hearts are filled with hate and resentment. Abu Sufyan said, What do you suggest? He said, By Allah, I see that you will not leave it till he comes and you see the heads of the horses, or till the vanguard of his army turns up to you from behind that hill. Abu Sufyan said, By Allah, we have reached common consent to crush down the Muslims and their power. The man once more, with an implied warning, advised him to stop it. In the light of this news, the determination of the Meccan army failed, and panic and terror took firm hold of them. They constantly thought it safest to complete their withdrawal back to Mecca. They, however, as an alternative, started hostile news propaganda aiming at discouraging the Muslim army from pursuing them. A caravan belonging to Abdul Qais happened to pass by towards Medina. Abu Sufyan, in the context of his propaganda, asked them to communicate a message to Muhammad to the effect that the Meccans had rallied their ranks to kill the Messenger and his companions. In return, Abu Sufyan promised to give the people of the caravan lots of terraces at the forum of Ukaz the following year. The people of the caravan conveyed the message to Allah at Amr Aswad, but to no effect. On the contrary, Abu Sufyan's words increased them in faith. Allah says, وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله وفضل لم يمسهم سوء واتبعوا رضوان الله والله ذو فضل عظيم. And they say Allah alone is sufficient for us and is the best affairs for us. So they turn with grace and bounty from Allah, no harm touched them, and they followed the good pleasure of Allah, and Allah is the owner of the great bounty. That is Surah 3 verse 173 to 174. After the arrival of the caravan on Sunday, Allah stayed at Hamrul Asad for 3 days. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 9/11 Shawwal, 3H after Hijrah, and then returned to Medina. Before his return, he took Abu Azza al-Jumahi as a prisoner of war. Incidentally, this man had also been captured at Badr, but on account of his poverty and the large family he supported, the Prophet ﷺ had been gracious enough to release him on condition that he would not involve himself in war against the Muslims again. Abu Azza did not keep his promise and took part in the Uhud hostility on the side of the politics. Here again, he requested ﷺ for pardon, but the latter told him that a believer wouldn't be taken twice in the same trap. He then deservedly merited the sentence of death, which was executed by Zubair, or in other version by Asim bin Athabit radiallahu anhu. A Meccan spy called Mu'ayyah bin al-Mughira bin al-Abbas was sentenced to death too. This spy was a grandfather of Abdul Malik bin Marwan on his mother's side. When the Sultans went back after Uhud, Mu'ayyah came to his paternal cousin, Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. Uthman gave him shelter after securing the Prophet's permission on condition that if he was caught there after 3 days he will not be killed, but he did not comply with it. So when the Muslim army left Medina, he stayed there for more than 3 days, during which he was spying for the Quraysh. So when the army returned, Muawiyah fled out of Medina. And Rasulullah on this count ordered Zayd bin Abi Haritha and Ammar bin Yasir to pursue him and kill him, so he was killed. And absolutely, this invention of Hamratul Asad is not a separate invention, but rather a part of more specifically follow up to Uhud. Yeah? Bado. Hii staff yetu siku hizi mafuta labda ndio kwa vingine. A Meccan spy called Muawiyah bin al-Mughira bin al-Bulahaz was sentenced to death too. This spy was a grandfather of Abdul Malik bin Marwan on his mother's side. When the veterans went back after Uhud, Muawiyah came to his paternal cousin Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. Uthman gave him shelter after securing the Prophet's permission on condition that if he was caught there after 3 days, he will be killed, but he did not comply with it. So when the Muslim army left Medina, he stayed there for more than 3 days, during which he was spying for the Quraysh. So when the army returned, Muawiyah fled out of Medina. Allah on this account ordered Zayd bin Abi Haritha and Ammar bin Yasir to pursue him and kill him, so he was killed. Undoubtedly, the invasion of Hamratul Asad is not a separate invasion, but rather a part, or more specifically a follow-up to Uhud. That was the Battle of Uhud with all its stages and details. It has for long been discussed by scholars and men of research. Was it a defeat or not? Admittedly, the military superiority on the second phase of the battle was in favor of the polities, who could successfully direct the steering mechanism of hostilities and inflict heavy losses in lives on the Muslims. Admittedly, part of the body of believers was clearly defeated, but this could never be considered a Meccan victory. The Meccan army failed to occupy the camp of the Muslims. The greater bulk of the Madini's army, in spite of the chaos and confusion, did not take to escape. On the contrary, they showed matchless and heroic resistance and managed to gather themselves again around. They moreover did not allow the Meccans to run after them in pursuit. Neither Muslim captives were taken nor spoils were gained by the Meccans. The enemies of Islam also took courage to conduct the third phase of war and impress their superiority on the battlefield. On the contrary, they were on hot haste to evacuate the field even before the Muslims did. Many said the keeper of the Muslims was only a stone's draw from the lines of the enemy and vulnerably exposed, yet the British were not bold enough to storm it to plunder its wealth or carry the Muslim women therein. These suggestive details in fact support our argument that the event of Uhud was just an occasion on which the Meccans managed only to inflict heavy losses on the Muslims, but failed to achieve their ultimate goals of destroying the Muslim army in the process of the operation. After all, it is not unusual for the conquerors to sustain such casualties and losses, but this could under no circumstances be regarded as victory for the hostile party. The incident of Hamratul Asad is interesting in this regard. It is a curious sight indeed of a victorious army in retreat for fear of disgrace and defeat, and the damaged group of Muslims in pursuit. So this operation was not a separate battle, each party gaining some success and failure, not fleeing nor further engagement. In this sense, the operation could be regarded as an inseparable battle. ولا تهنوا في ابتغاء قوم إن تكونوا تلومون فإنهم يلومون كما تلومون وترجون من الله ما لا يرجون. In this one, Allah says, and don't be weak in the pursuit of the enemy. If you are suffering hardship, then surely they too are suffering hardships as you are suffering. That you have a hope from Allah for the reward is paradise, that which they have not, that which they hope not. That is Surah 4 verse 104. The vast experience identifies the attitudes of both the parties regarding losses and hardships as identical. Both parties concluded the military operations and returned neither victorious nor defeated. The observation of the Noble Quran on the Battle of Uhud, some Quranic events were revealed to shed light on the most decisive phases of the battle successively, bringing forward quite clearly the cause that led to that heavy loss, and illustrate the vulnerable areas that were still persisting in the souls of some believers over their duties. In adopting a divisive attitude with respect to the noble objectives for which the Muslim community was formed and what it was expected to accomplish. The Noble Quran also spoke about the attitude of those pretending to have faith and made clear the hostility and hatred that they hold against Allah and His Messenger. The words of Allah manage as well to raise all traces of uncertainty and objections raised by the hypocrites and their allies, the Jews, the authors of conspiracy and plots of intrigue, and which were still in active operation in the minds of some wicked-hearted Muslims. The admirable judgment and long-sought objective that were attributable to the Battle of Uhud were also another topic for the Noble Quran to dwell on at length. 60 passages relevant to the battle were revealed, giving full account of the first phase of the battle. وإذ غدوت من أهلك تبوي المؤمنين مقاعد للقتال. And when you Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam left your household in the morning to post the believers at their stations for the Battle of Uhud, that is Surah 3 verse 121, and to end in a comprehensive commentary on its result and immoralities. وما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب وما كان الله ليطلعكم على الغيب ولكن الله يجتبي من رسله إلى من يشاء فآمنوا بالله ورسوله وإن تتقوا فلكم أجر عظيم. Allah will not leave the believers in the state in which you are now until He extinguishes the wicked from the good. Nor will Allah disclose to you the secret of the ghaib unseen, but Allah chooses of His messengers whom He pleases. So believe in Allah and His messengers, and if you believe and fear Allah, then for you there is a great reward. Nataka sipo? Lessons and moralities. Ibn Qayyim has made a pointed reference to the Battle of Uhud and given full explanation of the divine benefit and moralities that resulted from it. Some Muslim scholars on the authority of Ibn Hajar said, in the story of Uhud and what happened to the Muslims there are important virtues and wise lessons among them. The Muslims recognize the evil result of disobedience and the danger of doing what is prohibited, as is the lesson in what happened when the Messenger ﷺ ordered the archers to maintain their position and not to vacate it. It's also customary that the messengers may be tried and they experience some suffering, and the wisdom is this, that when they are continually victorious, some people who are not believers will join them, and the truth will not be distinguishable from the others. But if they are continually defeated them, then the objectives of the missions will never be met. So the wisdom in the presence of both circumstances is the distinction between the truthful and deceitful. For the hypocrisy of the hypocrite was silent from the Muslims. But when this event took place and the hypocrite openly behaved as they did, then things became very clear and the Muslims realized that they have enemies in their own home. Then they could prepare for them and be on guard against them. And by laying victory in some cases, the pride of the soul is restricted and diminished. For when the believers are tried, they are patient while the hypocrites grieve. And that Allah has prepared exalted abodes for His believing servants which they could never attain by their deeds alone. So He has given them trials and adversities that bring them to it. Martyrdom is among the highest ranks of the true friends of Allah, and Allah wants to destroy His enemies. So He makes causes for them by which they will deserve that end due to their disbelief, their tyranny and transgression against His friends. By such the believers' sins are wiped out and they are imposed upon the disbelievers.